so immediately after um, the last event, you can access this event because it activates the next day, as Crowler foreshadowed at the very end of the last one. Now this is after the... oh yeah. I decided not to speed up or cut out a lot of this stuff because there's two things in here I could have easily cut out. This quiz, as well as a duel, and the only duel, between two AI. I decided not to do it because otherwise the episode would have been pretty dang short, and I'm not sure if I can access the next event anyway. But yeah, you can see me epically fail on some of the quiz questions here. Now, the next section of the story is based off of when Cyrus and Jaden had to duel the Paradox brothers. And guess what? They used their Gate Guardian strategy there because, you know, it was back in a double duel, but sadly they aren't really that dangerous in this game. True, they have some strong monsters and they go mostly off of tribute summoning. That's a problem. They go off of tribute summoning, meaning that they have to rely on a specific field card called Mausoleum of the Emperor, where you can summon monsters that usually require sacrifices by giving up either 1,000 for one sacrifice or 2,000 for two sacrifices. Now both of their decks I think have the same idea with some minor changes. Like, I know one of them deals more with regaining life points quickly, but I don't remember. And Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelist of the Roses, whenever all these cards had their real effects, and they were really scary back then, he still didn't really use the Gate Guardian thing. Of course, I don't think Gate Guardian was accessible in that game, but could be wrong. But he had a lot of monsters that could move through the labyrinth areas of the board, which was really scary because, first off, it was filled with the labyrinth, and second off, because there were usually some very strong monsters in that. So, other than that quick explanation of the Paradox Brothers, we finally get to access the event, and probably one of the coolest parts of the game, in my opinion. It's whenever you fight Jaden. Well, no. It's whenever you edit Jaden's deck for him. Now, you don't have to, but his deck is so painfully bad, and his cards are so painfully good, that it's almost required if you ever want to beat the game. Now here, I was able to access another pack, so showing what I was going to get. But I need to talk more about general strategies you want to do for helping Jaden's deck out. So, what you want to do to pimp Jaden's deck is... Sorry, weird transition between the videos and Live Movie Maker. Is generally... most places say you should get rid of all the Winged Kuriboh cards, all the specific Elemental Hero cards, add most every one of his limited cards in the trunk over there, and in my opinion, you should add every fusion and take out most of the, well, yeah, I don't really use most of the other hero cards besides Emergency Call. I do sometimes use H-Heated Fusion, but H-Heated Heart, but I don't find it that helpful, and this is the final deck. I do suggest adding all the fusion cards, taking out all the Elemental Hero specific cards, minus I guess Hero Barrier. And just a lot of the other good cards he has. But the biggest thing to remember is all of the fusion cards. Now, you don't specifically have to keep all of the Elemental Heroes, like the weaker ones like Percentrix and Avion, but I decided to do so in this because I forgot. Now, this part of the game is kind of interesting because this is the only time in the game you ever see a full-length computer versus computer duel. So it can really go either way. You can have a pretty good deck, but he just might get a bad draw and you don't have the ability to do anything about it. But until then, I'm just gonna kind of ramble about something. How about Apple? I mean, I was gonna talk specifically about iTunes, but how about just Apple in general? Good grief, they are one of the biggest companies out there. And I mean, they have good products, like their biggest being the iPods, and there are thousands of variants now. I myself own an iPod Touch 3G, 32 gigs. Wasn't too bad. I got it off Craigslist for a very cheap price. So, the main problem I have with the Apple products is that's just it. There's so many now. Holy cow, I can't. Thanks to Verizon and almost every other cell phone carrier having iPhones for sale, I see them all the time, and it's very annoying. I mean, occasionally I see droids and stuff, but good grief, almost everywhere I find someone having an iPod, no, not iPod, an iPhone, and, you know, I also see iPads pretty often, but could just be because the area I live in is sort of rich. And then there's iTunes. When it comes to Apple's sharing policy, it makes no sense. I mean, from what I heard, it used to be that anytime you buy anything on iTunes directly from your iPod, you wouldn't be able to get it back if you lost the data somehow. And that's kind of weird to me because you should be able to get it again. I mean, most other internet websites that give you music for a price allow you to re-download for free, like eMusic. But, alas, no. And then iTunes is pretty expensive compared to a lot of places, which is why most everyone I know just goes ahead and downloads everything illegally. I don't really do that because I find that I get so much money anyhow that I can get most of it for free. And there's also the eMusic, which is a much better alternative for iTunes if you ask me. They give you so much free stuff. But here's where iTunes starts getting weird. They have a really weird censoring policy. They have, I mean, they allow most any music, although they'll tell you, oh, by the way, this is explicit, but sometimes they don't label songs that have known cuss words as explicit. And then, very annoyingly, they don't make clean versions of those songs. I mean, good grief. When it came to finding two songs in particular would be Airplanes by B.O.B. or One Republic's Good Life. I couldn't find a clean version because they didn't label it an explicit version on iTunes, so therefore they didn't think it needed a clean version. I had to find them on the internet, which makes me just sigh. And then the even weirder thing about iTunes Music is that once you download iTunes Music, for whatever reason, you can edit that music yourself, like say with Movie Maker or whatever. It just denies you. Now, what the heck is that for? So, I need to check, see if there's anything else I was going to say. Oh yeah, there's movies. What the heck is with their movies? Um, the main way their movies is that you can either rent it or you have to buy it. Now, renting and buying, there's not too much of a difference there. They're both very expensive compared to, say, Redbox or, yeah, Redbox. There's not much else out there. So, I'm wondering, why is it that there's not any kind of, from what I heard, legal way to transfer movies from DVD format into an iPod accessible format? That just seems kind of wrong to make it so that you can't access a movie that you've rightfully bought unless you try and search and find some app that allows you to, or otherwise. Um, just go ahead and buy it. But they're very expensive. I mean, I've only looked at one price ever, but it was what, $15.99 or $14.99, something that big. Then of course there's Apple's iPads. Oh, why the iPads? I understand now a little bit more that they're supposed to be like enhanced versions of iPod Touches, but I mean, my mom actually owns one, and she doesn't really do too much of it that you're able to access with. I mean, she has like what, a few apps maybe, and they're pretty expensive too. I'd sooner get an iPod. And then there's the higher prices for all of the apps and stuff, although they are better looking, I'll give it that. And after all of that, that's really all I can say about Apple for now. Now back to the duel. I was so close to beating this guy, and then he barely survives to 100, and then he brings out Goombo. Now, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game has had a long history of giving you really powerful monsters that have some gigantic obstacle to hurdle over. Goombo is one of them, and his problem is that you have to flip a coin, and if you call it incorrectly, you have to give up half your life points. Now, since he has 100 life points, that doesn't matter to him anymore, so I'm like, well, crap. I was so close to beating him, but then this duel got drawn out like 4 more turns because of his lucky draw. Now, something that's nice about Mausoleum of the Emperor is that since it's a field spell, and it doesn't have anything to tell you you can't, you're able to use its effect on him. Meaning that if you have a monster that requires a sacrifice, you can use its effect, even though it's his card. And this also draws out the duel. I was like, oh yeah, finally able to win. And then I get rid of the wrong card and realize, wait, I can't destroy this monster. I have to wait. And of course he's able to use that to get up another monster and even destroy one of my monsters. I mean, I still have this duel in the back, but good grief. This went on way longer than it needed to. Oh, and looking at his whip, it reminds me of a quick thing I can say about the original Pokemon games. I never really liked Yellow because even though it was the most different of them, I just never liked the first generation Pokemon games in general. Even though the first one I owned was Fire Red, and I have played it occasionally. A weird thing I noticed after watching the whole game through, there was a lot of random trainers in that game that had whips. There were Rocket Grunts and a few other I can't really think of at the top of my head, but if you just look at all the sprites for the trainers in that game, most of them will have a whip of some sort. Kind of weird. Of course, we're talking about the same company that censored the slot machines in the later generations. Really?